Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well today. This time we are going to be looking at a bunch of NES launch games. We did this for the Sega Genesis, but the NES has a lot more launch games than the Genesis does, especially in North America. There were 18 launch games for the NES in North America. This was kind of different, especially since the Famicom had been out for a while, and in Japan, the Famicom only launched with 3 games, none of which were launch titles for the NES for some weird reason. I feel like having Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. on the NES would have probably helped it out a little bit more. They eventually became black box games, but they weren't launch titles for whatever reason. Like a lot of games that were released on home console at the time, these were very arcade-type video games, or at least games that gave you an arcade experience. You had some single-screen games in there, and you had some sports games that were pretty far ahead of what you had seen on the Atari 2600, the 5200, the ColecoVision, and the Intellivision. The game that kind of lasted longer, or at least stood the test of time, in my opinion, was Super Mario Bros. It was the one that was just the most fun to play out of all of these. It's still more fun than many of the other games now. And for whatever reason, it just managed to stick around a lot longer than the other games. It helped to get Nintendo's foot in the door. So you have a game that's just really amazing. It gets packed in with the console, and it's something that everybody can play. It's not a hard game at all. It's fairly easy to understand. You only have 1 or 2 buttons, and it's just kind of a fun game to go around and play through. I don't think this was the first game I ever played, but it was definitely the one that I remember playing first. Mostly I remember watching my brother play it, but I had fun when I got the chance to actually grab the controller. It kind of gave me a bit of love for Luigi, since he was the one that I always kind of got stuck with. It kind of sucked that way, but I remember having just a lot of fun playing this game. Mostly, unfortunately, watching my brother play it, but also playing it myself. Now, Wrecking Crew is one that I never remember hearing about. It just never heard about the game growing up. It's pretty fun for what it is. I just, for whatever reason, had no idea that this game ever existed. I kind of wish I did know about it back then, but yeah, it's kind of a weird and pretty fun game, to be perfectly honest. It's definitely just a single-screen arcade game. It plays pretty well. It's, the animation and everything is great. The controls are great. It does make you think a little bit. It's not exactly a single-screen arcade, but it's pretty damn close to it. And it has Mario in it, so, why not? Why would it be a bad game if it has Mario in it? Don't mention the CDI games. That would just, completely defeat the point of me mentioning that Mario is a great game and how he hasn't really been in too many bad ones. Then we get to Clu Clu Land, and this is a game that just confused the living hell out of me. I didn't know exactly what you were supposed to be or what you were supposed to be doing when you first, or at least when I first played this. And I didn't play it as a launch game. I don't remember anyone ever talking about it when I was growing up. But yeah, playing it for this and playing it for a few other things, it's kind of a fun game. The controls are just kind of infuriating to me, but once you get the hang of it, it can be a pretty fun game. A lot of what this is just spinning around and finding all the rubies, which apparently Link had forgotten to collect. But it's kind of a fun game for what it is. You're just sort of, making a picture with all these different coins and avoiding the weird little jellyfish type things. This is one of those games where you probably just didn't ask any questions and you just played it for fun. There are a lot of weird games like that where you just sat back, played the game, and didn't bother to really think too much about it at the time. So here's a fun one, and it's Kung Fu. I vaguely remember playing this over at one of the older kids' houses when I was growing up. It's a fun game. It's a very fun kind of side-scrolling beat-em-up. Not really... I mean, there is quite a bit of fun in here. If you like just kind of kicking and jumping around, dodging things, it's a fun game. It's not one that I'm very good at, just because I don't really like these 2D beat-em-ups. I like it more when you can actually move around and do other stuff with them. But for the time and for what they were working with the NES, wow, sorry about that. What they're working with on the NES, it's a pretty good game. I got pretty frustrated with it, but it's pretty fun to go through and play. And I wish I could remember more about playing it when I was growing up. Like I said, just very vague memories of playing it. And then to kind of wrap up some of the more arcade type games, or at least the ones that I would think about when I think of arcade games, is Ice Climbers. This is a game I didn't know about until I started collecting video games. I remember seeing them in Super Smash Brothers on the GameCube. I can't remember exactly what that one was, sorry. But I remember seeing them as playable characters on that version of Super Smash Brothers, and having just no idea what they were. And then, of course, I do want to say this is my best friend, even though I do kind of rag on him quite a bit. He would always do stuff like this. If I had never heard of a game, he'd be very shocked by it. And this was one of those games I had never heard of. I mean, if you didn't rent it, or you didn't know anybody that would rent the game, or had rented it, you didn't know about the damn games growing up. And I don't remember anyone talking about Ice Climbers or renting Ice Climbers when I was growing up. It was just one of those games that slipped through the cracks for me. It is a fun game for what it is. You're just trying to move up the different levels, and I can see it being quite a bit of fun for, just a short little distraction. A lot of these arcade games are like that. I could see them being fun for a little bit and then just kind of moving on with your life. So now we move away from some of the more arcade games, or at least the games I consider to be more arcade-like, and we move into the sports games for the NES. Now these were a lot more advanced than what you would have seen on the previous systems, like I mentioned, but they're still not really there as far as what you would think of as like a modern sports game. These are more simulations, like baseball here. This is actually one of the easiest versions of baseball to get into. It's pretty easy to do most of the things in this game. I honestly don't like certain parts of it, but for the most part, it was pretty easy to play. The things I didn't like are kind of universal for every baseball game for the most part when it comes to the NES, and not really for all baseball games, but definitely for like the 8 and 16-bit era. And I don't really know who I'm throwing the ball to when I'm trying to get the ball to the different bases. I know there has to be some kind of a system or something that I'm clearly doing wrong, but I just could not figure it out for the life of me. I would play it and I would just be confused. That was probably my biggest issue with it. It's a fun game, but it's very simple. You can really only play a game of baseball with it. You can't really do much more. It's not on the same level as simulation games you would find later on, or anything along those lines. Okay, so we leave baseball behind, and now we go into football. Or at least American football. Don't want to get it confused with soccer, which I unfortunately didn't have and couldn't really play for this. This game, 10-Yard Fight, Jesus Christ, I hated this. Like, it was just really infuriating to play. Mostly because I kept thinking about modern football games, and this is really a throwback in just every stretch of the word. You don't pick your plays in this. What you're doing is you're running, oh god, it's not a triple option, but it's like a run pass option type thing. How can I explain this? You play as the quarterback on offense, and you have the option to either pitch the ball to a running back or try to throw the ball. And good fucking luck if you try to throw the ball, because it's a guessing game as to what happens. I don't think that you actually kick extra points. I don't think that you punt. At least I couldn't get to that stage at all. This is a very, like, oh gosh, think like 1940s, 1950s college game, or maybe even later than that. This is very, very basic when it comes to, like, football games. And it is just incredibly annoying, and I absolutely hated it. It's definitely, you could skip this one, and I'm pretty sure once Tech Mobile came out, everybody kind of forgot about 10-Yard Fight. It's very much an arcade football game, and it's pretty goddamn awful, at least in my opinion. Okay, so leaving 10-Yard Fight, thankfully in the past, and moving on to a game that's just a lot more fun in my opinion, and that's Excite Bike. I have a love-hate relationship with Excite Bike. It's a very fun game to play, but my god, like, getting back into it because I hadn't played it in a while, there's a lot of frustration here, but it's for some weird reason it's like nostalgic fun with the frustration, where you're playing along and just every so often your bike just overheats, and no matter what you try to do, or at least no matter what I tried to do, I could not get into like a good rhythm with that at all. I know with practice I could probably have gotten a lot better at it. There was just something going on there where I just was not getting the thing down. I remember playing this game over at my cousin's house, like many games at the time. I have no idea why he picked out Excite Bike, and I don't even think he knew at the time. He definitely doesn't remember now why he picked it out. But yeah, this was just one of those things you did. You would buy a game based off something you know, or based off the box art. And I guess he saw Excite Bike and he thought, this'll be great. And it is. Excite Bike is a lot of fun. So we go from Excite Bike into golf, and man, there was a lot of pain when I started playing this one for this video. I remember this being just as frustrating as what I was experiencing. I mean, you can just tell from my score, and I believe it was like 55 over. I was awful when I first started this, and it keeps track of every single swing, not just when you hit the ball, but every time you just swing it. I had a friend, my friend Joe played this, or at least he owned the game. That would actually make more sense. He owned the game, and we would go over there and we would play. Oh gosh, I don't know how many people would play, but I remember always being the red suited guy, I think. And yeah, it was, I don't think we ever finished a game. We would always get bored with it. But golf's kind of a lot of fun for what it is once you figure out exactly what you need to do. It's one of those games that I have more memories of than anything else than actually enjoying the game. But let's get into some of the other games that I just couldn't capture video for, or I didn't own for whatever reason. The first two are going to be Stack Up and Gyromite, and that's because I don't own Rob the Robot, so I couldn't exactly set him up to play it. These two are the only Rob games. They're not really all that much fun, even playing with Rob. It's kind of a shame because it's a cool idea, but just never really worked out. The other games I couldn't play were pinball, soccer, tennis, duck hunt, Hogan's Alley, and Wild Gunman. I don't have a working zapper anymore, so I couldn't play those, but I really like the light gun games, especially Duck Hunt. We had the combo cart, and I remember playing that, way too many times. I think I got to like level 70-something in Clay Pigeon once, which is just kind of insane to me when I think about it, especially now. I don't think I ever got close again, and I really doubt that I could ever get back there. The other games are just ones that I either thought I had and couldn't find, or I probably just never owned. I gave up on trying to get like a complete set, so I didn't really bother like really looking for all of them. Anyway, guys, that's gonna wrap things up. The NES had a really good launch lineup for the time. It's pretty. I mean, you look at it now and you think, yeah, it's kind of simple, and you don't really have any of those games that are going to hold your interest for too long. But that really wasn't the point. In the mid-'80s, you were really trying to bring that arcade experience back home. And these games kind of did that. And they expanded off of that. And they allowed, for bigger games. They allowed for more complex games. And they kind of, helped to create more genres. Because at the time, you didn't really have too many of them. Throughout the 80s, they were still kind of solidifying what the different genres were going to be and that sort of thing. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. Have a great day, everybody.